everyone, welcome to the OklaRoots YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we're going over one of the coolest, edgiest, most unique wallets you've seen out there. Today, we're going over the Ymir skull wallet from Diamonds and Coal. So, this is the first version I made, and now I know my print is very busy, it's a little tricky to see the design. But if you can see here, this front flap, it's like the half profile of a skull. So we have the little eye socket here, and part of the nose socket. I absolutely love this design. So, some things I want to point out. We do have a fold over. It's a bifold wallet, which is 2 folds. We have 6 card slots on one side down here, and then we have 3 slip pockets. A slip pocket here, slip pocket here, slip pocket here. So lots of pocket options on this. There's also a zip pocket on the back. It is a small zip pocket, but it does work for loose change, coins, things like that. This has a very slim feel to it, and it does have raw edges. So it is a vinyl wallet. You're gonna wanna use cork or vinyl. You're not gonna wanna use any material here that frays, okay? The only piece of like cotton woven quilt cotton we have is going to be for the lining of the pocket. Other than that, everything needs to be a non-fraying material. So for me, I pick the vinyl I want for the exterior first, and then I pick a nice big piece of vinyl for the inside, and then the rest of this, all these card slot strips, these are just scraps of vinyl that I have laying around. So this is the first version that I made, and then this is the second version. And if you notice, the skulls are going in opposite ways. This one here is the correct direction. I cut this one out wrong, but I just wanted to show you that it still works perfectly fine. So this is the second version that I made, and you can see on this version, I did not edge coat the edges. So on this first version here, I don't know if you guys can see the difference. This first version here, I edge coated the edges, which means it's like a leather paint that you use on the edges so that you don't really see any of those raw edges. However, if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. Here's the second version with all the raw edges, and it looks still very professional. So on the flap, we do have magnetic snaps. I'll show you this. Let me just show you guys this one real quick. This one is a little bit easier to see the full outline of. Isn't that cool? And then here's the back. Isn't that amazing? I love this so much. And then once again, we open it up and we have the card slots and the 3 slip pockets. So this wallet comes together very quickly. This is a fantastic sit at the machine and just bust it out project. You really don't have a lot of ironing, a lot of fusing. So if your ironing station, if your cutting station, if they're all in different places from your sewing machine, you're not gonna be moving around a whole lot. You can really just cut it all out, sit at the machine, and pretty much construct all of it. There's just, you know, one bit of ironing we have to do, but other than that, this is a very relaxing, quick sew. This is a fantastic gift for anybody in your life that has a little bit of an edge to them, but especially going into the fall, I feel like this is a really fun, easy way to carry the basic necessities, especially if you're traveling or if you're going to any like spooky activities. This is a really cool addition to your attire. So thank you so much to Diamonds and Coal for allowing me to use this pattern in my tutorial. I'm so excited to share it with you. I hope you guys get as excited about this as I am. If you're new to the OklaRoots YouTube channel, please consider clicking subscribe down below. If at any point you like this video, please give it a like. Any questions, comments, shoutouts, anything at all, leave them down in the comments section. I will have timestamps as always for every step of this tutorial. They will be in the description, so if you just go down over here, click the little arrow, expand the description box, they'll be listed there. They're also running along the bottom of the video, so you just kind of hover over where you're interested in going, click there, and it'll take you straight there in the video. Alrighty, let's get started. Alright, so here's the material we're going to be using today. So first, let's talk about the slip pockets inside and the credit card pockets. I have an entire bin full of strips of vinyl just like this. So this is great if you have a lot of scraps of vinyl, pieces of vinyl that really aren't big enough for like a full project, but they're not so small that you want to throw them away. This is going to be great for it. Then I have my main vinyl. Now this is going to be the exterior of the wallet. This is the vinyl you're going to see the most of. I'm using this awesome vinyl right here. And then I'm going to need another cut of vinyl that is about the same size as that. So for that, I'm going to use this little iridescent vinyl. This is what you're going to see on the inside of the wallet. You don't see a ton of it. It is behind the slip pockets and behind the flap, but it is enough that you want it to look nice. So you're definitely gonna want about a ½ yard of vinyl or cork or material for the exterior and the lining, and then scraps for the card slots. You're gonna want a fat quarter of quilt cotton or cotton woven material. This is for the lining of the zip pocket. And then you would also want about a fat quarter of Decovil heavy, We just have a couple cuts from this, but it is going to provide a lot of structure to this wallet. So here's pretty much the rest of the stuff we're going to be using today. So first let's talk about the needles. I always use this Schmetz 8012 Microtex needles. It's just my go-to. If you find your vinyl is very thick and you're having a hard time working with it, bump this up to a Schmetz Microtex 9014 and you should be in good shape. The thread I'm using today is going to be this variegated thread. This is a Tex 35 weight thread. It should work in the top needle for most domestic machines. For the bobbin, I like to use this Gutermann polyester. I was thinking of using this in the bobbin, but I haven't tried it yet, so I can't suggest that. Of course, lots of clips, as always. I have my X-Acto knife. This is a Fiskars X-Acto knife. This is just another X-Acto extra. It's something that's going to be easy for you to cut out the details without having to use scissors. It's going to be easier with an X-Acto knife. Always my seam ripper and stiletto. And then I have a pen for marking on vinyl, an air erasing marker so that I can mark this on some place that will be seen in the end, but then the marker will erase, so it won't. And then a friction pen. This is one that is heat erasing. I would not suggest using this on anything that will be seen in the end, but it's fine on the back of fabrics for tracing, everything like that. Double-sided tape is going to be helpful for installing the zipper today. My Kai fabric scissors, these are my favorite for cutting vinyl, fabric, pretty much everything. I love this, just don't cut paper with it, okay? And then you're gonna need 2 sets of magnetic snaps. Now I am using these rivet press magnetic snaps, which are really cool because when we install them on the back side, it's just this smooth little rivet, which if you're gonna have the back side showing in the end, this is great because it looks nice versus the magnetic snaps with the prongs. In this case, it's not going to be showing. However, this is a much smoother finish than those, those prongs that stick out of the back of other magnetic snaps. And so I don't have to worry so much about this damaging the fabric on the other side. So if this rubs against the back side of another piece of vinyl, it's not going to tear it because it is so smooth. So I do like using these for this project. If you use these, you're going to need the associated dies and press, everything like that. And of course, to set those, I will be using my Cam Snaps Rivet Press. Okay, so let's go over the pattern pieces A, B, and C. From pattern piece A, this is the exterior part of your wallet. This has that skull outline. It's so cool. Whenever you're cutting this out, this needs to be pattern piece right side up on the back of your vinyl. So like this. Okay, I did do it opposite for my first attempt. It's okay if you do that. It's perfectly fine if you do it backwards. It'll still turn out. Just you need to remember where everything goes. But this is my exterior piece. You can see I already cut out the holes for the eyes, the nose, and the zipper. That's where that X-Acto knife comes in really handy. You just put this on your cutting mat, trace it out, cut it out. It looks really cool. And then for the backing of the eye, so we're going to have this kind of peek through like that. I have another scrap piece of vinyl. I do suggest having some contrast here so you can really see it. If you have like a dark vinyl and then the dark eyes, I mean, it'll still look really cool. It just might be harder to see. From pattern piece B, we have the interior of the wallet. So I'm just using this white vinyl for that. These both need to be vinyl. Pattern piece C is your zipper pocket lining. This should be some sort of fabric. I suggest some sort of quilt cotton or cotton woven. It is not lined with anything. Pattern pieces D and E are your Decovil heavy. These will be applied to the 2 ends of your wallet to provide a really firm foundation. You need to make sure you add this. I do not suggest skipping this. I think this is going to provide a really professional finish to the wallet. So Decovil heavy or Peltex. Decovil heavy is better though. All right, so here is where I used all those scraps of vinyl. From pattern piece F, you're gonna need 2 cuts for your slip pockets. Pattern piece G, 2 cuts for card slot pockets. Pattern piece H is another card slot pocket, and then pattern piece I is a small slip pocket. So let's talk edge coating real quick. We are not gonna go over edge coating in this tutorial. I want to keep this as simple as possible. I will have an entire video discussing the process of edge coating, but I do want to kind of give you a heads up on everything in case you're ready to do that now. If you want, before you start sewing, you can start edge coating all of the raw edges that are going to be seen that are not the exterior final edge. So that would be the inside of the eye, the inside of the nose, and the inside of the zipper. You can go ahead and edge coat all those, let that dry. And then edge coat the top edge of all of your pockets. So all of your card slot pockets, slip pockets, all of that. top edge only. And then that way, all of the raw edges that won't be able to be edge coated in the final product are ready to go. I'm not doing that today, but if you wanted to, now's the time to do it. The edge coat setup I've been using lately is from Giardini. So for Giardini, you have a base coat. And this base coat, if you've ever painted wood and you have to put a primer first down, and you know whenever you put that primer down on the wood kind of sucks it in, and then when you put the color down, the color paints over really nicely. It doesn't seep into the wood so much, it just like goes over it. That's exactly what this is. This is the foundation, right? So if you put your makeup on, this is your foundation. This gives everything a nice canvas to work on. So I usually do 2 coats of the base coat, and I use this tool here to apply it. You just dip it in, go over the edges, and then 2 coats of base coat, and then I'll do 2 or 3 coats of the color. So you can see with this Giardini set, there are a lot of different color options. This is what I got. I do use these colors all the time. So, but this is a black one here, and you just let it dry. It doesn't take long to dry. It's a very easy process. I'm a big fan of it, but we're not gonna do it today. I just wanted to give you a heads up if you wanted to look into these, and we will have a full video going over just this very soon. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is prep our little fabric slip pocket. So I'm gonna use these 2 pieces to help with that. So I'm gonna flip this fabric over to the wrong side, and then I have my template for the slip pocket. Now notice this is not a square, it is a rectangle. So make sure you line it up appropriately. And I just use my scissors and I cut along this marking here for the slip pocket. So I'm just gonna line it up so it's nice and straight. I'm gonna grab my fabric marker and I am just going to trace inside of that cut line. It can be kind of messy. Just keep it as straight as possible. Get the overall idea in there. Let's see. That's good. So now I have my little triangles and straight midpoint line marked. To make sure I don't over press this, I'm also going to grab this outer unit that has the cutout for the actual zipper, and I'm gonna lay that over my design, making sure that the triangles go in the corners of the rectangle and that middle line is right down the middle. Just like that. And now I'm going to also trace out the outline of this rectangle. There we go. And this is just to make sure I don't overdo it whenever I'm pressing these edges back. I don't want to press them so far back that when I stitch it in place, I don't catch the edges. You'll see. So that's how I prep that. Okay, now that I have that marked, I am going to cut along that middle line and then also along the little triangles. I'm not cutting around that exterior rectangle, only along that middle line and then off towards the edges of the rectangle. All right, so do the same for both sides. Again, those triangles just go to the corners of the rectangle. They don't go past it. There we go. So now we're gonna grab our iron and we're going to press back these long raw edges. And so you don't want to press it back so much like that, because then you end up having a much bigger hole than you need. And that's why having that mark right there for the rectangle, it helps, because I know just to press it back onto that mark, and then I'll use my iron to really hold it in place. So I did it for one of the longer edges. I'm gonna do it for the other long edge as well. And then also make sure you press back these little tiny triangles. We just want a nice clean rectangle here. All right, there we go. Now our little lining pocket piece is ready to go. Just make sure those stay out of the way. We can use tape when we need to, when we get to that point. Okay, so the first step is some reverse applique. We have these holes here for the eye and the nose. What we're gonna do is we're gonna put this vinyl behind it and we're gonna stitch it in place. So to prep for that, go ahead and grab some double-sided tape and just add little bits of double-sided tape around the eye and nose to hold the vinyl in place. I do suggest this Dritz tape because you can sew over it and it's not gonna gunk up your needle. So it doesn't have to be perfect, just enough to hold it all in place so it doesn't shift around on you while you're sewing. I'm using one piece of vinyl that's gonna cover both of these spots, but you could use 2 different pieces of vinyl. You could even use fabric for this if you wanted. Okay, so now I'm just gonna kind of line up my scrap over it to make sure it fits. And then I'll just trim it down. Here we go. Okay, so in the end, this will peek through here and I will trim down the excess after I have this stitched in place. So I'm gonna flip this back over and I'm gonna remove the paper from my double-sided tape on all these little pieces. All right, once all of that paper is removed, you're gonna take your vinyl and lay it right side down on the back. So everything is wrong side up. Make sure it covers both of those areas really well. Push it in place, flip it over, there we go. So now we're gonna go top stitch very slowly around these open holes here. I take my machine speed and I put it all the way down. I go super slow. You might find using a zipper foot is helpful here so you can really see where the needle is going. But the key to this, the key to a smooth top stitch around these little details is slow, slow, slow. All right, so I top stitched around both of these pieces, and I'll be honest, I forgot to make my bobbin tail long before I started this nose piece. So it's very, very small back here. And the reason I want them long is because I'm not back stitching. I'm going to pull all of this thread to the back of the vinyl. So this is where a stiletto comes in really handy because you can just kind of pull on your bobbin thread and then you'll see a little loop from your top thread and you can just pull that back. So then you'll have both of your bobbin threads and your top threads, all 4 pieces on the back side close together. I'm gonna do this for both of my pieces here. And then all you have to do is take the 4 units, lift them up, separate them into 2 and 2, and then just give them a couple of knots. So I tie it 2 or 3 times to really hold it in place. And then you can just trim down those threads. And since this is the back, we don't need to burn this, but you can if you'd like. Burning that little knot, as long as you're gentle, if you burn it too much, it's going to completely unravel the knot and then this can come out. But if you just melt it just a little bit, it helps all the thread kind of melt together and it makes it a little bit firmer. So now we have a really cool top stitching holding this down. Once you have that done, go ahead and trim this backing vinyl so that it's about 1/4 inch away from the stitching. We just don't want this vinyl hanging over the edge of our wallet. So just trim it down so it's nice and tucked in back here. And there we go. So now it's only covering that detail. Isn't that cool? I love this. Okay, so now let's prep our zipper. So I like to just measure my zipper like this. You guys know I like zipper tape. I don't really pre-cut my zippers because sometimes I've cut my zippers and they've ended up too short. So I like to wait until I'm at that point and then I cut it quite a bit longer than it needs to be because I can always trim it down. And then I'll just attach my zipper pull to the zipper. I've had a lot of you guys asking for a tutorial on attaching zipper pulls. And honestly, all I do is just open one end like this. I insert the right side first into my zipper pull, and the zipper pull always looks kind of like an arrow. There's like a more pointy edge, so the pointy edge goes down into the zipper. So I insert it into the right side of the pointy edge, and then I insert the left part in and I just kind of like pull down the right side. I just look from the top here and make sure that they're 1 coil over each other, so one's not like 5 coils longer than the other. And then once they're lined up, I just push down on the zipper pull and hold down the end with my fingers and pull it on. I know it's not that precise, but it's how I do it. Okay, so flip your exterior panel wrong side up. Grab some double-sided tape. Let's tape this zipper down. So I'm just going to tape it along the long edges. I'm going to take my tape, run it parallel right next to the long edges of my rectangle opening here. And then I'm going to remove the paper of one side first. And now I'm going to lay my zipper right side up so that the zipper is going up towards the top when closing. So as the zipper is closing, it's going up towards the top. And then I can just center my panel's right side up, my zipper's right side up. I can just center my panel over that zipper, making sure the coils are going down the middle of that rectangle. So you might have to kind of adjust it a little bit. I like to get it mostly there on one side and then I close the zipper pull and that gives me a better straight line so I can see everything. And then I'm just gonna flip this over and remove the paper from the other piece of tape that I have here. And then I'll fold down that side. And now I have my zipper taped in place. Look how stinking cool that is. This is a good one, guys. This is a good wallet. I'm excited about this one. Always double check the back and make sure your zipper is overhanging enough on both ends. My zipper is overhanging a lot down here on the bottom, not as much up here on the top. I can adjust it, but I think I'll be okay. I think it's overhanging enough that I'll be able to catch it and close it up just fine. Okay, now flip this over and let's look at the zipper pull in the back. And now, once again, we're gonna grab our double-sided tape, and now we're gonna add double-sided tape to the back of our zipper tape. And this is what's gonna hold the lining in place before we stitch it on. So you can do just the long edges, but you could do the long edges and the short edges. Honestly, right now, the more the better. So whatever you're comfortable with using, I would do that. You just want everything to stay in place. Okay, so let's go ahead and remove the paper from the tape. So now you can see I have the skull on the right here, the zipper in the middle, the rectangle on the left. I'm going to grab my lining and I'm gonna lay my lining right side up. Now remember how we pressed down these long edges? We're going to center our lining over our zipper tape. And now remember, I closed my zipper all the way, so my zipper pull is up here at the top. And that's kind of important because when you're lining this up, you wanna make sure these short edges get caught when you're going over the zipper. So if you have this kind of moved one way or the other, you might not catch these shorter edges. If you don't catch them, that's okay. You can actually fix it. I did that on my last one, and I can go over that if you'd like. And what I want to remind you is that this is the lining of a very small pocket. The details of this will not be seen at all. Inside here, whatever's going on right here, this will not be seen ever. So if this is not perfect, if we have to fix it, that's fine. So just make sure all 4 edges are tucked in really well and that it's in place. The only thing we're worried about here is getting this caught. So now we're gonna go to the sewing machine and we're gonna top stitch around all 4 edges of our zipper pocket opening. I do back stitch over these zipper coils because they get a lot of use and I wanna make sure that they're safe. And then after we're done with that, we'll check the lining. Okay, so I made 2 mistakes here, so this is exciting. We have a lot to learn together. First of all, over here on the right, you can see my top stitching did not catch the edge of that fabric at all. So to fix that, that's kind of easy because you do want to make sure that this edge gets caught. All we have to do is pull up our lining just like this and see that little triangle nub right there. We're gonna just kind of push that down and we're gonna remove the front piece back. And all we have to do is go back to the machine and just stitch this little triangle down on the zipper tape. Just go back and forth over it to hold it in place and then that will be fine. All right, now over here on the left side is a more unique problem, which is a first for me. So we're gonna figure this out together. The problem with this one is that we top stitch so far away from the edge of this smaller part here on the rectangle that that little triangle flips right out like that. And we need this to get back. We need to stitch this back. So what I'm gonna have to do is kind of trim the triangle so that I have more to work with here. And if you have suggestions, feel free to leave them below. But what I want is for this to be tucked in and stitched in place, but I can't get it further than that. Now, I can just unpick this entire thing and resew it. The thing is with vinyl, you don't always want to do that because once you poke a hole in vinyl, it's there forever. So you can do it and it will look fine, but it won't look as good as it does now. But this back here does not look good at all, so we need to figure this out. All right, I'm at a loss, so desperate times call for desperate measures. I am going to trim off this little triangle like this. Try to get this as neatly trimmed as possible over here on the back. Again, I'm happy to know that this is not something that's going to be seen much. Make sure you don't accidentally cut your threads. We're still gonna tie that off. All right, so I have this trimmed down, and unfortunately right here on the left side of my rectangle, that is raw edges of quilt cotton, which can unravel and cause a problem in the end. So I grabbed some fray check. I don't use fray check a whole lot, but when in need, it will definitely help out. So this is just like an oily liquid, and you're just gonna put it on the edges of your woven material, and it's gonna kind of seal them and almost act like a glue. And it's just gonna make sure that those don't fray. It's not pretty, it's not ideal, but it will help me fix the problem. So honestly, the best way to avoid this in the future is to make sure you mark on the back of the zipper where the edges of that rectangle are before you put down your lining, just to make sure it's centered. The thing I did wrong was that I had it too far down, not enough to the left, which is exactly what I said don't do whenever I was doing this. So problems happen, we can fix them. All right, I don't know if you can notice, but fray check, it does darken the fabric a little bit, but again, this isn't something that's going to be seen. So I have my 2 bobbin tails here, and I'm going to pull on those to bring the top stitching to the back. And now let's separate these into sets of 2 and tie this in about 2 or 3 knots. All right, so now let's just close up this mess, shall we? I'm going to take my lining and fold it right sides together so that these shorter edges meet one another. Grab some clips and just clip them together. Make sure you also clip the sides as well, so just push it down with your hand to flatten it out. All right, to close this pocket, we're gonna flip this right side up at the machine, and we're gonna pull back the vinyl while we stitch around the pocket. Now, you wanna make sure when you're stitching this that your stitches aren't outside the edge of your vinyl, right? So I just kind of fold it back and line it up with where my stitches are on my zipper, and I stitch about 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch away from the edge of the vinyl. Again, I'm not stitching on the vinyl, only the lining. Go over the lining, over the extended part of my zipper, all the way around the top, and then back over here on the other side. Again, I like to catch as much of the zipper as I can just to really hold it down. The thing is, you just don't want any of this material to be really close to your edge, because we don't want to see this on the edge of the wallet in the end. Okay, here we go. See, our pocket is overextending, but we have a nice tight rectangle back here. So now we're just going to trim this down. Might be easy for you to open it this way. So trim it down so that it's at about 1/4 inch seam allowance from your stitching. If you have a zipper that is overhanging too close to the edge, go ahead and trim that down as well. Okay, so even with my mistake, this still looks really cool. And let's see, when you open it up and you dig around inside, you're not gonna even notice the mistake. So I know sometimes little things like that can feel very defeating, like, well, I just screwed up the whole project, but you didn't screw it up. Most of the stuff you're never even gonna see. Don't worry about it. Okay, so now we're going to apply the Decovil Heavy to the back of our exterior panel. So take your exterior card slot panel and lay it wrong side up. Haha, I almost forgot about my bag tag. I always forget this part. Okay, so before we attach the stabilizer, let's talk about the bag tag real quick. I like to put mine just to the side of the zipper on the bottom. You can put it wherever you want. Just remember that this is going to be double folded. So the skull will be folded in, this part will be folded in. So, you know, don't put it, I mean, unless you want to, but maybe no, don't put it right on the edge. I find putting it about 1/4 to 1/2 inch up from the bottom and just kind of line it up with the zipper. That's a good spot for it. So I always grab a piece of double-sided tape and tape this in place before stitching it down. I know it's a small piece, but I found if I don't do that, I will sew it on crooked. It's inevitable. So the tape, just make sure that it does stay straight. It's about 1/2 inch from the bottom, maybe 1/4 inch from the top stitching by the zipper. There we go. So now I'm just gonna top stitch this in place, just at 1/8 inch seam allowance around the whole little rectangle here. When you're top stitching this, probably best to move your pocket out of the way. You don't really need to sew over that. So just tuck that pocket out of the way and then top stitch. All right, there we go. I got that top stitched in place. I've had a few of you guys ask how to make sure you get like straight top stitching around your labels so your lines aren't all, you know, slanted or anything like that. My biggest suggestion is a smaller stitch size. I know with top stitching we like to use a 3.5 millimeter, but that makes it so that it's hard to get it lined up exactly where you want it. It might go off the edge or be way too far away from the edge, and then you like try to like make up for it by going at a slant, and then it looks crazy. A smaller stitch length will allow you to get exactly where you want on that corner before you pivot and go down the next edge. That's just one tip. Also, just don't worry about it. So now we're gonna add our Decovil Heavy. So starting with a rectangle, let's do that one first. So you're gonna lay this out so it's about 1/4 inch away from the edges. Now you can definitely grab a ruler here and get it exactly where it needs to be. You can also just kind of eyeball it. Same thing with the face. You're gonna lay it close to the edge, just like this. And I am doing about 1/4 inch away from the edge, maybe 3/8 inch. And so when I'm fusing Decovil Heavy onto vinyl, I use a pressing cloth, and I'm going to fuse it from the back. So I'm going to take, and a pressing cloth is just a scrap piece of fabric. It's the fancy name. And we're going to just cover the section of Decovil Heavy we're working with, hoping it stays in place. And then I'm going to grab my iron with steam, and I'm going to just kind of hold it on the back. And you should be fine. I have fused a lot of interfacing to vinyl, and I've never had an issue with anything happening to the vinyl. Some vinyl that is a little bit more stretchy, and if you kind of pull on it and play with it, you'll tell it's a stretchy vinyl. It might stretch a little bit because of the heat, but I haven't had anything noticeable enough to give a warning on. All right, you can go ahead and remove your cloth. Just take a look, make sure it's all there. Good, that's great. So let's do the same thing on the other side. And if you really want to avoid pressing this with an iron, you can just use your Beacon 3-in-1 glue and just glue this in place and let it dry, and that will work just as fine. Okay, so once you have that pressed in place, you'll notice you can kind of fold it. Isn't that cool? And that is now, you're getting a really good feel in your hands for how this is going to turn out in the end. Isn't that awesome? Excuse my iron, it's loud. Okay, so now we're going to install some magnetic snaps. So take your exterior panel and lay it wrong side up. Try to keep that zipper pull nice and flat. And we're going to take our template and we're going to line it up on the left side where the rectangle is. So just make sure that's lined up. If it's not perfectly lined up over here, that's fine. Just make sure that this rectangle area is lined up. Grab a marking tool, and you have these little dot placements. Those are for magnetic snaps. Go ahead and just inside of those, poke a hole if you haven't already, but you want to transfer those dots to your wallet. There we go. So now, since I'm using these rivet magnetic snaps, I'm going to punch a hole where these dots are with my hole punch on my rivet press. If you're using the magnetic snaps that have the prongs, you're going to use the washer to mark placement for slits and then add the prongs like that. But I want to show you this other option. So we're going through the Decovil Heavy and through the vinyl. And I'm just punching holes using my press. Okay, so we are installing the female ends. So I'm going to grab my 2 female magnetic snaps. They're all stuck together over here. So I'm going to grab a snap and put it on the right side of the vinyl. See, it should go right there. And then on the back, I'm going to grab a cap and just snap that together just like that. And that will hold it in place. So I'm going to do the same thing with the other female magnetic snap. There we go. See that? And now I'm going to grab my other rivet press and I'm going to install the dies. So I have one die, and this is for the cap portion. This goes on the top. And then I have another die, and this is for the female portion. So you can see the die almost looks like a male snap, and that's what we're going to use to install the female snap. And that goes on the bottom. So all I have to do is insert this so the cap is up, tuck it in there really well, and then press down. Do this for both of them. And there we go. Now our snaps are installed, and you can see this is very smooth. I really don't need to put any fusible fleece on it. I don't need to put any sort of interfacing or duct tape on it to protect the other layer of vinyl. This is going to be, it's just very, very smooth. If you're using prongs though, you do want to put something over the back of those prongs to protect the vinyl on the other side. But this is what this looks like. I love it. Okay, let's set this to the side for just a moment. So now let's grab all of our card slot pockets. And what we want to do is we want to take this to the sewing machine and we want to top stitch along the top edge of each one of these. So you should have 2, 4, 5, 6 pieces here. Top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance along all 6 of these pieces. I do back stitch at the beginning and the end of each one of these top stitchings, pretty much just because I don't want to have to like pull the thread through and tie knots for every single one of them. So back stitch at the beginning and the edge of each one of these. All right, here we go. They're all top stitched. You can see this vinyl right here, this shiny black one, it sticks like no other to my presser foot. So I did actually just grab a tissue, an unused tissue, and I just laid it along so that the presser foot would touch the tissue, but the needle didn't, and that helped a ton. So in a pinch, you can always do that. Okay, so now let's take our 3 card slot panels. These are our slip pockets. These are our card slot panels, and we're gonna lay them all wrong side up. Grab some double-sided tape, and let's put a layer of double-sided tape on the bottom of each of these card slot pockets. Okay, now grab one of your slip pockets. This is your main slip pocket F, and it's rainbow for me. And then take one of your card slot pockets that have the little tabs on the end. This is piece G. And you're gonna line up this card slot pocket so it's 3/8 of an inch from the top edge. And then you can just peel off the paper from the tape on the bottom here and tape that down. And now let's take this to the sewing machine and just top stitch along this bottom edge right here to hold this piece in place. So next you're going to take your other middle card slot pocket and you're going to do the same thing. You're going to line it up 3/8 of an inch from the top edge of that card slot pocket you just stitched down. And you can just take off the tape and press this down to tape it in place. And now let's stitch along the bottom of this edge, once again at 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm just top stitching. Forgot to record that step. I apologize. And then finally take your bottom card slot pocket and line it up along the bottom edge of your slip pocket, and it should be covering the bottom tabs of those middle pockets as well. And then you can just remove the tape and tape this down. There we go. And you can stitch this down at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Again, since this is really sticky vinyl, I'm going to use my tissue. And I'm only using a tissue to help because it's what happens to be sitting right next to my machine. I have a box of tissues over there. You could also use a silicone presser foot. You could use tape. You could use tissue paper, which is like gift wrapping, gift paper. You know what I mean. Okay, now we're going to divide these pockets. So I just marked a line going straight down the middle of my vinyl panels. And we're going to just sew on the right side of this all the way up to the top, go over, and then sew down the left side of this. It's going to provide a really secure stitch here so that you can use these pockets without having to worry about the seams ripping. I always like to start at the bottom and go up and then go back down towards the bottom. All right, there we go. And since I use that vinyl marker on vinyl, I can just rub off that silver ink. Okay, so your credit card slots are ready to go. Let's grab the other slip pocket. So you're just going to take your smaller slip pocket and line it up with the bottom edge, both right side up of the larger slip pocket. And you can use some clips here to hold these together. And now let's top stitch at 1/4 inch seam allowance on the bottom of these two slip pockets. Okay, here we go. So if you need to clean up any of this, go ahead and do that. For example, my pocket is a little not lined up, so I'm just going to trim this down just a tiny bit, and then we'll be able to clean it all up in the end as well. So now we have both of our pocket units. We have our slip pockets, and then we have our card slot pockets, and then the two slip pockets on the back. Okay, so now we're going to kind of assemble this all together. So take your main exterior unit and lay it wrong side up, and you can use glue or double-sided tape here. I will use double-sided tape because it can be just a little bit quicker. And we're going to add the glue or tape around all of the edges on the wrong side of our exterior panel. So around the skull over here, I just kind of loosely do it. I'm not too precise with everything, but we want to make sure that this doesn't shift on us because we're going to be top stitching it to a giant rectangle. All right, you know what? I just realized we did not install the male ends of the snaps on this lining piece, so I still have my tape all exposed. I'm just going to set that to the side for a quick moment. And I'm going to take my interior vinyl piece and lay it wrong side up. And then I'll take my template and match this up perfectly. There we go. And then I'll grab a marking tool and just mark the dots. Now remember, this is a different pattern piece than the one we used for the front. This is the main interior panel piece. Just like before, I'm going to punch out these holes using my hole punch. And if you're using the magnetic snaps with prongs, you're just going to mark the holes for the prongs using the washers. I'm also going to cut off a small scrap of Decovil Heavy, just like that. And I'm going to punch a hole in each one of these little pieces. And I did this because I don't want my snaps to just be holding onto this vinyl. I need to beef them up. So now from the right side of my vinyl, I'm going to install the male snap, just like that. And then I'm going to put the Decovil Heavy over the back. And then I'll put the cap on. So I have like a little vinyl and Decovil Heavy sandwich. I'm going to do this for both male snaps. All right, and then I got my press out. I just need to switch the bottom dies out. So the bottom die I'm using now looks like the female end. And so I put the male end of my snap down into that and then press it down. And there we go, really quick, really easy. Since this is so smooth, I really don't need to add anything over it. If you have Decovil Heavy, make sure it doesn't go off the edge too much. There we go. So now grab your front panel that has that exposed tape and then lay this down. The snaps should be on the right by the skull side. And we're gonna lay these vinyl wrong sides together, lining up the rectangle edges first, and then just kind of draping this over, making sure it's covering all the edges. You might find it easiest to flip this right side up and press from that side because the zipper pull and everything can get a little bumpy. And then it's a little bumpy around these snaps. I know, you'll be fine. Just use that glue and tape, whatever you're using, whatever sticky stuff you have, just use that to help you here, okay? So now flip this so that you have the interior right side up, and then grab your unit with the credit card slots, and we're gonna line that up over here on the left, just right against that rectangle side. Use clips to hold this in place, and depending on the vinyl you use, this might be pretty thick, okay? So this is when you need to start thinking about switching your needle out for a stronger one. If you had any struggles with your needle so far, like going through these card slot pockets, you definitely want to switch out your needle to a thicker one. Okay, so I used my vinyl pen to mark little tick marks that are 3/4 of an inch away from the top edge of this slip pocket. And then we're gonna take our remaining slip pockets, and with pockets opening sides together, we're going to line this up. So this one should be 3/4 of an inch away from the other one. Use those little tick marks to help you if necessary. And then grab some clips and clip this in place. Just make sure you clip down the sides as well. I know it can be a little bulky because of the zipper pull. Go ahead and flip it over. So for me, I need to flatten this out a little bit more. So just make sure it's really flat from the front exterior side. So if you kind of have to just smush it down and move it around, that's okay. Alrighty, there we go. So we have everything lined up. Everything just needs to be top stitched together, which can be a little tricky, so let me explain that to you. We're gonna top stitch it with this side, the exterior facing right side up. The hardest part here is getting around these magnets, okay? Because it is a little bulky. I do suggest you use a zipper foot here because that's gonna let you get close to this without, you know, your presser foot going all over the place and then you go off the edge and it's so frustrating. Also, once I'm on this side over here, I actually lift up my material like this to get this as flat as possible so I don't have everything flat because you can see this kind of pops up when I try to do that. But if I lift this up just like that, I can get this spot flat and just go really slow. The slower you go, the better. And before you get going, make sure if you have any Decovil heavy over here, it's not in the seam or poking out the edge. I do have to trim mine down just a little bit, and that Decovil heavy was for the snaps on the interior side. All right, now let's just top stitch around the entire unit at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. If you have really sticky vinyl here on the bottom, that might be a problem, so grab some tissue paper or something to kind of cover this, so as you're sewing, this doesn't start sticking to the bottom of the machine. Alright, so that is looking so good. I don't know how, I sped up the video. This took me over 4 minutes to top stitch, just so you know. I speed up the videos because you guys don't need 4 minutes of me sewing. But it took me 4 minutes to top stitch because as you can see, I lift up the presser foot a lot, try to see where I am, make sure I'm okay. I gotta be honest, if you are not a strong top stitcher, look into getting variegated thread. There's something, for some reason, variegated thread, every time I use it, it just kind of blends into whatever vinyl or fabric you're using. It's almost invisible sometimes. So it's actually a great thread for those of us who are not straight top stitchers. Okay, so over here on the sides, I did leave my tails once again. So I'm just gonna pull on my bobbin threads very gently so that I can get a hold of the top thread and just pull it to the back here. Okay, now I have all 4 of my threads, and once again, I'm just gonna tie a triple knot nice and tight without breaking anything. And then once I have that tied, I can just trim it with my scissors and then very gently burn off those little edges without completely burning the knot. There we go. It should be nice and flat. So now we need to sew close the edge of this slip pocket here. So what you can do is just take this to the machine and sew from the inside 1/8 of an inch seam allowance along this bottom here, and then the bobbin thread will show on the right side of the vinyl. But if you really don't want the bobbin thread to show there, what you can do is grab some of this masking tape and just make sure it's as tall as your unit. And then I'm gonna line it up with the edges of my slip pocket. So you can see the edge of my slip pocket right here, it overextends this little nub by just a little bit. That's one side. So I'm gonna line up my masking tape there. And I'm lining it up on the face part, so it's gonna be below the pocket. And then I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. I'm finding that edge of the top of my slip pocket and just lining up my masking tape. So now I know that this edge right here, that is the bottom of that slip pocket, and that's what I need to close. So now what I can do is go to my machine and I can stitch 1/4 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch to the right of this masking tape, and that should catch the bottom edge here of this slip pocket. So let's go give that a try. All right, and you might notice that I did back stitch at the beginning and the end there. You don't have to, you can pull the tails through. I might still do that, but let's remove this tape. And let's look at the other side, and you can see we have a perfect top stitching right there, and that's just fantastic. That way, it looks nice and clean on both sides. See? That looks great. All right, so now let's just clean this up. So if you need to pull your threads from that top stitching to one side or the other, go ahead and do that. And then let's just tie those knots, trim them down, and get them cleaned up. All right, the last thing we need to do is clean up this edge here. So you're just gonna hold this with the vinyl, with the exterior, with your skull, right side up. And you're just gonna carefully take your scissors and trim right along the edge of the outline of your skull. So you don't need to trim through the vinyl that's right side up right now. So as you're cutting this out, you're not trying to cut through the exterior vinyl, only that interior vinyl. So you might find you need to get some smaller scissors for like this little curve right here. And you'll notice with this pattern, I say go slow a lot, because that's just how you're gonna get through this without making mistakes. I mean, even then you might make mistakes. I made mistakes. But just make sure you cut through all the layers here in this little corner. And then, for example, if you have this little corner right here where you're having a hard time cutting, just grab some smaller scissors and just gently go in there. Just cut a little bit from both directions. Okay, and then what I do is I look, and if I have any of those little pockets overhanging anywhere, I will just trim those down, because I want this to all be nice and clean, and I don't want to see any backside of the vinyl peeking through on the front. So I'm just going to kind of shave it down gently without cutting my exterior vinyl. There we go. All right, so it's all trimmed down. Let's try it out. Let's fold it and snap it. Oh my goodness, that looks so cool. And you might want to kind of mush it a little bit, flatten it out the way you want it, but this looks so cool. Look at that. Look at that. Oh my gosh. And then you open it up. And we got some rainbow in there. There's nothing wrong with that. Oh, okay, this is such a cool wallet. Now the vinyl and the zipper tape and the zipper pull all come from Mojo Sews. I will have a link for them down below. This is so cool. You guys, this might be the coolest one I've made yet. Look. This vinyl just works so well with that skull outline. I wasn't quite sure, you know, the whole like Sith thing. I think that's what it is, Siths, right? Anyways, I wasn't sure about that with the skull, but, and then we got our little buddy back here like, hey guys, this is such a fun wallet. Let's open it up. Their little snaps. Ba-bam. So shiny. Yeah, that vinyl gave us a run for our money. Now let's look at where I really messed up, okay? I even warned you guys to not mess this up, and I still messed it up. That's the way it goes sometimes. So let's open up that zipper pocket, and let's just take a little peek around in there. You guys, you can't see anything. You cannot see any of the mess ups in there. So I just want to encourage you with that, because a lot of times little things seem really big when we're in the middle of working on every little detail of these things. But in the end, they're not. They're still little things, and they're not going to be noticeable. This is so cool. I love this. And I do really encourage you. So all of these were made using variegated thread. And so you can still see the thread, but you can't see every single like little jagged skip or anything like that. So I would say that if you are not a strong top stitcher, get variegated thread because it hides a lot. So once again, thank you so much to Diamonds & Coal for allowing me to use this pattern today. I think this is so fun. You guys, if you haven't made one, please go ahead and give it a shot. You can get so creative with this. I absolutely love it. I hope you're having a great day. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Get out there and make something. Bye guys.